Do you just need somebody to do the presentation? You need somebody to do the slides for the presentation. Oh, Jen.
Trustee Fair, you're on the air.
Great. Welcome to the 190th meeting of the Audit Committee of Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. The date is June 30th, 2020. The time is 7:30 a.m. Can we have a roll call, please?
Hey, I'll note that all the trustees are present.
And motion for approval of the minutes of the 189th meeting.
So move. Second.
All right. Comments by the chair, there are none. So we'll move to Clifton, Larson, Allen, external audit, please.
All right, great. We have Jacques Throw and Stacy Young from Clifton, Larson, Allen on to go through the audit of the retirement plans. Jacques and Stacy?
Good morning. So this is Jacques Throw. I'm a principal with CLA in the St. Louis office, and also on the line is Stacy Young. Stacy's a manager in our employee benefits group and was in charge of managing the MSD retirement audits that we will discuss this morning. So today we're going to cover the presentation materials that I think you all have. Tim, is that correct? Everybody have the materials?
Yes.
Okay. So if you turn to page 2 of the materials, the table of contents, on that slide, you'll see the information that we'll cover this morning. We'll cover the terms of the scope of the engagement. We'll cover required communications, and then we'll cover the overall results. Page 3 of the presentation, scope of the engagement includes issuing an opinion on the employee pension plan, the defined contribution plan, as well as the deferred compensation plan. Additionally, we would issue a letter that includes any required internal control findings that come to light during the engagements. And then lastly, we also issue a required communications letter to the governing body, which is a requirement of any audit that is completed. The audits are complete and are available to be approved by the committee at the conclusion of this presentation. Turning to page 4 of the materials, just covering again some more scope matters. We do perform what's called a risk-based audit approach. After understanding the plans and the processes, we focus on areas with the most significance and the most risk. The slide shows some of the areas where we spend a considerable amount of our time. Investments obviously are an area we spend a lot of time on, confirming balances, testing transactions, looking at valuation methods, but we also spend a lot of time making sure plan provisions are being handled correctly. So we make sure plan contributions, employee deferrals are appropriately being made to the plan. We test benefit payments to participants to make sure they agree not only to the plan provisions, but also participant elections. And lastly, we review plan expenses to make sure they are in line with administrative and fee arrangements. Moving to page 5 of the materials, we'll start covering some of the highlights of the actual reports themselves. Page 5 provides a summary of the activity of the pension plan, which is a defined benefit plan. The first line shows the net position of the plan. You'll see that the net position improved about $35.5 million over the prior year. Obviously, the major change this year was the change in the investment market, which is shown on the next line as investment income changed by about $55.5 million to the better this year. Contributions to the plan were almost $13 million during the year, and consistent with the actuarial calculations and also consistent with the prior year. Advisory and administrative expenses are consistent and in accordance with agreements. And lastly, you'll see that there are about 1,400 participants in the plan for 2019. That that number will only decrease as the plan accepts no new participants over the coming years. The one thing not on this summary that maybe we should have added is information regarding the pension liability, which is found in the footnotes of the financial statements. The pension liability was calculated by actuaries to be roughly $354 million as of December 31st, 2019, which is an increase of about $19 million over the prior year. But net of plan assets, the pension liability is roughly $58 million, which is an overall decrease in the net position liability of about $16 million. And the fiduciary net position as a percent of the pension liability improved from 78% to 84%. Turning to page 6. On page 6, we find the highlights for the deferred compensation plan. Much the same as the pension plan, the net position improved primarily due to the improvement in the investment markets. Again, besides the large change in investment income, expenses, contributions, and benefit payments were all consistent with the year before. The thing to keep in mind with the plan is that all contributions in this plan come from employees, where in the pension plan, all contributions come from the employer. And lastly, you'll note that total participants increased to 810 in this plan from 773. Page 7. You'll see the results of the defined contribution plan. Again, similar story as the other two plans, in that you'll see the net position of the plans increasing by about $4.4 million. In large part, this has to do with the large change in the investment markets again. This plan includes primarily employer contributions, but it also does allow employee rollovers from the other plans. And there were some substantial rollovers in the current year, which were part of the increase in contributions from the prior year. And again, you see the total number of participants increasing in this plan up to 540. Moving to page 8 of the materials. So now we'll cover some of the information that's included in the required communications letters that are issued at the conclusion of the audits. We performed the audit in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles or auditing principles. We provide an opinion on the financial statements. We review internal controls, but we don't provide an opinion on them. We do communicate significant matters if we become aware of them. Nothing changed from the plan scope and timing of the audit from the onset. And the audited financial statements should be used in their entirety if utilized in any other documents containing them. If you turn to page 9, continuing on in the letter. Management is responsible for all accounting principles and policies, and you will find these policies primarily in footnote 1 to each of the 3 financial statements. The accounting policies are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Estimates are used in the preparation of all financial statements. The most significant estimates in these statements relate to the pension liability calculated by the actuary and the valuation of investments. These are, we do review the estimates during our audit procedures, and we noted no problems with the estimates utilized by management. And lastly, on this page, all financial statement disclosures were in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Turning to page 10 of the materials. All transactions were in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. There is additional unaudited supplementary information included in the financials, and they are consistent with prior years. We did receive a representation letter from management at the conclusion of the audits. And lastly, we encountered no difficulties, issues, or disagreements during the course of the audit procedures. Moving to page 11, we are required to communicate any corrected and uncorrected adjustments that may occur during our audit procedures. There were no audit adjustments posted for any of the 3 audits this year. There was one past adjustment, but this really related to an adjustment that was passed on in the prior year. You may recall one of the alternative investments was not adjusted for lag adjustments determined after initial reporting was completed. Therefore, that lag activity was recorded in the current 2019 statements. There was no one posted lag adjustments in the current year. Moving to page 12. So page 12 is a summary of the overall results. We expressed what are termed unmodified opinions in all 3 of the financial statements. This is the best possible outcome, what would be considered a clean opinion. Additionally, there were no weaknesses or deficiencies that were required to be reported in an internal control letter. So in conclusion, those are the details that we wanted to cover this morning. Be happy to answer any questions that anybody on the committee might have.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Now that we're out of the hedge funds, are there any investments that with the pension plans, plural, that you cannot test valuations?
There are not any plans. I mean, there are not any investments that I'm aware of that we are not able to test valuation. Stacy, you might chime in, but as far as I know, we are able to receive all confirmations. We do receive copies of the audit reports on the alternative investments, which I think you're referring to in relation to the pension funds. And Stacy, if I recall correctly, we did receive all the confirmations this year. We did receive copies of the audit reports on all of the funds in the pension plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But I don't think we're in alternate investments anymore. I mean, except for maybe a little bit.
Well, there's real estate.
I didn't hear what Tim said.
There's real estate.
I see. So the real estate, we're relying upon the audit of the sub-advisory.
Correct. So there are actually auditors of those funds, and so we don't re-audit those investments. We rely on the audit reports of their audit firms.
Right. So the real estate right now is the only one where you're not independently testing valuation. Well, that's always a big issue. I know we earlier this year we just by luck avoided getting into a very complex investment. I don't know how you would have tested the valuation. We didn't get in it by happenstance. But yeah, I'd suggest to Tim and the board that before we get into an alternate investment or something really complicated, we consult with the audit firm to understand what the limitations are going to be in terms of them testing valuations. Okay, well that's all I get. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Jacques and Stacy. Trustee Fair, is it all right if we?
Yeah, move to
All right.
internal audit.
Next, Todd's going to go over the fiscal 2021 risk assessment and internal audit plan.
Good morning, everybody. So for those here, we're going to be using this presentation right here. So I did want to take a few minutes to go over the plan for FY21. So if you would, we're going to move directly to page 4 in the document, page 4. And first thing I want to do is just take a minute to explain and clarify the differences between external audit and internal audit. I think this will help our newer trustees a little bit. Even people in this building get confused. There's basically two sets of auditors running around the building, basically. There's the external auditors who are, their main focus is on the financial statements and the controls and the process around those financial statements. Now, we just had Clifton and Larson here. They were discussing the benefit plans. The next time you'll hear from them probably is they're going to be talking about the main financial statement, the main financial statement package. Now, internal audit, that's my team and myself. We're more concerned about controls across the district. We're much more process-oriented. We're not nearly as concerned about the financial statements. We know that the external auditor is looking at those. So we try not to, we let them do their job. Not that we're not concerned about them at all. And we do communicate with them. They look at our audit reports, and we talk to them, so we help each other out. If you look at the middle of this slide, you can see there's some overlap there where we kind of overlap a little bit, but we try to avoid duplication of effort. So I hope that helps clear up that part of things. It gets confusing for everybody, I think, sometimes. Any questions on that? Let's move to page 5. Risk assessment methodology, as far as what did we do to determine our audits for this year. Look to the left. We basically utilized some inputs on the left-hand side. I guess the first thing we sit down and just brainstorm amongst ourselves, and then I also meet with the directors and talk to them. I reached out to each one of the trustees to get and see what their concerns are. We take those inputs and do a risk assessment and basically develop an audit plan. I'll explain a little better on the next page here. It will make more sense. We actually have a spreadsheet tool that captures this thought process. I'm on page 6. And it mechanizes this process. And look to the left, there's different attributes and factors that we consider. First one is always, what's the overall risk in the area? Now, we want to focus on high-risk areas for sure. Some of the areas that are just inherently high, you got revenue, you probably got network security, you've got procure to pay or purchase to pay. Those are big, very important areas. Construction are very important areas to the district. So we assign points based on those factors. As you go on to the next one, you got the date of the last audit. When's the last time we did an audit on a particular area? Was it 5 years ago? Was it 10 years ago? So we assign points based on that. The results of the audit. Was it a clean audit? Did it have a lot of problems? Again, we assess it, we assign points. And then in the recent developments, there's a new system in place. There's a lot of turnover. Did something happen in that area? So we take that all into account and put it in a spreadsheet, and it kind of spits out a list of the audits we should be doing based on the points. We pretty much have a pretty good idea what we might be doing even the following year based on that, but we keep updating it. So any questions on that? From there, let's move to page 9, please. Page 9. The overall internal audit cycle. So throughout the year, we're doing audits, and we issue recommendations. Based on that, the process owners develop action plans in response. And then they go through and implement those changes. And then we come back around and do follow-up procedures. We make sure those action plans are being followed through with. And we'll be starting that pretty soon now. And we'll have a report on that in October for you. So we'll have that every year. With that, let's move on to page 11. And we'll talk about the actual audits that we're going to be doing in the audit plan for this coming year. There's actually 9 engagements. It's really 8, plus the one is really a kind of a monitoring thing. That's the overhead rates. So the first one, I did mention revenue. That's a very important area of revenue. Last time I looked at it was 2017. This is really the engine of the district. So it's very important for us to look at it every so often. Again, this is one of the areas we kind of but it does affect the financial statements. So the external auditors are always very interested in what we come up with and what we see. The risks are that, revenues are not calculated accurately, revenues are lost, customers are overbilled, underbilled. So we look at all that. We test everything. Any questions on that? Overhead rates is the next item. This is really just more of a monitoring thing. I take a look at all the overhead rates for the different design contracts and the construction management contracts to make sure we're not getting, the rates are reasonable. If we see something we don't like, then we dig into it and we push back and say, hey, we have engineering talk to the contractor and see what's going on. We try to keep the rates reasonable. Next item on page 12 is purchase to pay. Again, another key district cycle. Controls around the vendor master are critical here. And so we look at that, this one every few years. Last time we looked at was 2017. Risks here are district funds are not adequately safeguarded or protected. You could have misuse of funds, misappropriation, you could have duplicate payments. So we're looking for all that. We do a lot of testing around the vendor supplier master. The next item, stop me if anybody has any questions, let me know. Network vulnerability and attack penetration, that's network security. We just finished an audit on that. We'll have a report for you at the end of the summer. I think I mentioned we're going to ramp this up. So we're going to start doing this every year. With the landscape we're in, it's become a best practice that we do this every year. So we're going to hit this again next year about the same time towards the end of spring and early summer. So that was the risk here, or the network is breached, operations are interrupted, private data is exposed. Those are pretty serious risks that can occur. So, any questions? Page 13. We're going to take a look at DEC. That is our Department of Environmental Compliance. We're going to look at 3 of the 5 different areas. The second 2 we're going to look at next year. Just doing all 5 at once is just too much. The 3 areas we're going to look at is regulatory affairs, stormwater unit, and emergency response unit. Each one has an individual tasks for the area. Last time we looked at was 2015. We had 3 issues identified. Nothing was serious there. But since that time, they have implemented a new system. I say it's a different system. For their environmental management system, they have leveraged our Maximal system, which already exists. Operations uses Maximal for their operations work. So they leverage the capabilities of Maximal to turn it into an EMS system. So I've heard it's working really well, but we'll find out when we do the audit. So as far as risks, procedures, basically the biggest risk there is the procedures are not adequately designed to make sure we're staying in regulatory, environmental, and meeting those requirements. There's a bunch of items that are listed. I'm not going to read off each one, but that's the general idea. Now, the next item would be construction change order processing. Again, construction being a very large area, lots of dollars, and one of the most touchy areas within construction is change orders, because things can go awry there. So that's why we look at that every few years. Change orders could be not processed properly. We can get overcharged. We can miss the credits that we're supposed to get. So we try to hit that every 3, 4, 5 years. Page 14, inventory. Last time we looked at it was 2017. We had 7 issues, but 3 of them were real low items. There was just a few minor items on this one. Actually, this is a moderate area. We don't look at it as normal as often as some of the other areas, but I think it really does help us to look at. It helps finance get some comfort, and we actually identified some issues I think that will help them last time. So that's why we moved it up a year. Design and construction management contracts is the next item. This focuses on, last time I looked at it was 2015. We did have 2 items identified as area. Again, it's another moderate area. I think we moved that one up because we had another area that we couldn't do this year, and we moved it back. So we had to sometimes we had to swap to make everything work as far as the timing. Any questions on that? So the very last item on the engagement plan is business continuity and disaster recovery. This area we did look at partially in 2018, but we only looked at the payroll portion. So this time we're going to look at the whole program because it wasn't ready to look at, so now we're going to look at it. This is a very important area. the risks are operations are interrupted, services interrupted. We can't, we aren't able to recover data. So we're going to make sure, we want to make sure we have a real solid plan in place for this. So I think it's very important that we do this one. Any questions on that? So that, if you want to move to the very, very last page, there is the schedule that I gave you last month. So you can see we're still on schedule. The 2 items for June 30th is what we did today. And August 4th, we will have those 2 audits ready, diversity and application database account management, which is an IT audit. And that'll be what you'll see at the next audit committee meeting. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
All right. Are there agenda items for upcoming meetings? All right.
I'm sorry.
Tim, do you have any?
That's number 6. It says agenda.
Agenda items for upcoming meetings.
Is that anything that you had?
No.
Okay. Then apparently not.
All right.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Was there one there?
That's okay. So the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. We have a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
Concludes the committee meeting.
All right, thank you. We'll have a few minutes, and we'll use that to get out the finance materials.
Welcome to the 256th meeting of the Finance Committee of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. The date is Tuesday, June 30th, 2020. The time is 8 a.m. Roll call.
All right, I will note that all the trustees are present.
Motion for approval of the minutes from the June 2nd, 2020 meeting.
So move. Second.
Minutes are approved. Do we have a portfolio update?
We do. So this is the sheet that Janice has on the screen now that we look at every month. So quickly, we're in compliance with our operating portfolio policy, our investment policy. Total par for the month was a little over $600 million. That's slightly up from last month. The yield to maturity of the portfolio has dropped as interest rates have stayed low and as our portfolio turns over. We're still well ahead of the benchmark because the entire benchmark turns over every month, and just a portion of ours is we had about 50 to 60 million that turned over last month. The sector allocation in the upper right-hand side, that just shows where we are compared to policy limits. Everything is within limits. The federal agency notes are close. We get a little bit better yield there than we do on the U.S. Treasury, so that's why we have more in the agencies. The commercial paper amount has dropped a lot. That's our, while we only invest in very highly rated commercial paper, that's still the riskiest asset we have, and just in these kind of turbulent times, we've limited how much we're putting in commercial paper. A summary of where the funds are is in the bottom right, and maturity distribution just really highlights the difference between our portfolio and the benchmark. Benchmark, everything's invested 1 to 3 years. We have things that mature much sooner because we use those to pay for construction and operations and that sort of thing. But we are in compliance with policy is the key takeaway from this report. Any questions on the portfolio summary? All right, then I am going to jump ahead to the next item. We have Bill Winningham from Milliman, the actuary, on the phone, and he is going to go over some of the actuarial reports together every year for us for the MSD pension plan. All yours, Bill. Bill, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I had to turn my mic back on. We prepare 2 reports for the district with respect to the pension plan every year. One is the actuarial valuation, which is used to determine the contribution amount, and the other one is for accounting purposes under GASB. So I was going to start out with the one that labeled Milliman Actuarial Valuation in the top, in blue at the top. And starting on page 4, the page number is in the lower right-hand corner of each page. At the top of the page, we have a comparison of the 2019 contribution requirement to the 2020. First of all, under 2019, the contribution requirement was $12,725,000 approximately, and that's the exact amount the district puts in. For 2020, it went up about $650,000 to $13,398,000, and that's primarily due to 2 reasons, both of which were assumption changes. One, the discount rate was lowered from 6.9% to 6.75%. And then the second one, there was a new mortality table published that was specifically based on public sector mortality experience. And that table is called the 2010 public table. We use the general table. They also have a public safety version and a teacher's version of that table, along with the mortality improvement projection scale, which is published in 2019. And that's the table that projects future improvements in mortality due to medical and, lifestyle and all that sort of stuff. And that's been actually going the other direction every year since 2014, meaning they're projecting a slower rate of improvement each time they've republish that table. And this was offset somewhat on an actuarial basis. The return for the year was 7.3%. On a market value was 16.1. So if you recall, we use a 3-year asset smoothing method on this plan for the actuarial value of assets. So investment gains and losses are recognized over a 3-year period. That helps lower the volatility in the contribution amount, and it might be kind of helpful at the end of this year, depending on how things go for the rest of the year. Turning ahead to page 5, we do look at we talked about the assumptions causing an increase, and that being offset by actuarial experience on the assets and the other assumptions. So we had a gain on assets of $1.4 million. Now that's based on the actuarial return of 7.3 versus the prior year assumption of 6.9. There was also a modest gain with salary increases being lower than expected, and then the $650,000 gain from all other sources for a total net actuarial gain of $3.1 million. Turning to page 6, we have a 2-column summary of the key valuation results. Top of the page, for a plan that's been closed like this, as you would expected, that active headcount keeps going down. Went down from 554 last year to 493. And the retired member headcount went up from 608 to 633, also expected. A couple lines down, you can see the market return. It was negative 4.7 last year, 16.3 this year. On a fund percentage basis, it increased from 77.8% to 83.7%. Again, that's on market, and that is after taking into account the assumption changes. On the actuarial basis, you can see that how the impact of that 3-year smoothing, the negative return was turned to a 3.8, so it smoothed that out, and then the gain we had last year was muted down to 7.3. And the funded percentage on the actuarial basis stayed about the same. It went from 82.6 to 82.2%. Turning to page 8, this is the statement of income and disbursements. This plan, since it's closed, is becoming more and more mature. By mature, I mean a greater portion of the liability is associated with retirees and beneficiaries. And that's evident in that the contributions in the income section were $12.7 million, whereas the disbursements for benefit payments was $18.6. So we have a negative cash flow here for this plan. Page 9, that just shows the working of the actuarial smoothing method. Moving ahead to page 11, this is where we determine the funding policy contribution. We start out under line 3 with the entry age accrued liability. So that's the funding target. When we talk about being 80% funded or 100% funded, that's the measurement stick we use. That's $354 million approximately. We subtract off the actuarial value of assets of $291 million, leaving you an unfunded liability of $63 million. That unfunded liability is being paid off over 20-year periods as changes in that unfunded liability occur. So there's a schedule of that on the next page that I'll go over. But the payment towards that unfunded liability that's included in this contribution calculation is under line 8. So we're paying $7.7 million this year towards that $63 million unfunded liability. To that we add line 6, the entry age normal cost. The normal cost is the value of benefits being earned by the remaining active employees for working from 1/1/2000 to 12/31/2020 for the 2020 plan year. You add those two together, and you have a contribution as of the first day of the year of $12,551,000. When we give that interest, it's $13,398,565. That contribution represents 36.4% of the active payroll. Is there any questions on the contribution calculation?
Bill, could you, what's that percentage again?
Of payroll? Yeah, it's 36.42. 3642.
Thank you.
And that's only of the payroll of the employees that are in the plan. So that doesn't include the people who are in the defined contribution plan. Next page, page 12, there's the schedule of amortizations of that unfunded liability. As you can see, when this policy was implemented in 2008, the initial balance was $28 million. That's been paid down to 14. It's about half of that's been paid off. And then down below, for this year, you can see that experience gain. We talked about a $3.1 million, and then there's 11.9 from the assumption changes. Okay. Skipping way ahead to page 24, we have a age by service distribution of the active population. You can see our 493 remaining active people, and for a closed plan, this is kind of what you expect to see. There's nobody with lower service left in the plan, and most of almost half the people are over age 50 now. So we have a lot of people that are going to be coming up into retirement in the next 5 to 10 years. And then the final page I want to cover is page 26, and this is where we reconcile the census from the prior year to this year. You can see we had 32 actives. Under the active column, we started out with 524 actives. We had 32 that retired, 7 that terminated with vested benefits. And then under the retired members column, when you add up all the people coming from the different categories, active, postponed retirees, those are retirees or actives over age 65 who haven't retired yet, and then the terminated vested members, we had a total of 50 retirements. We had 22 retirees die without a beneficiary and 6 die with a beneficiary. And the total head count decreased from 1,474 to 1,444 members. And that concludes what I wanted to cover for the main valuation report. Or any other questions?
Nope. Sounds like you can move on to the next report.
Okay. The next report is a little bit shorter. It's titled in the top Milliman Financial Reporting Valuation, and this is under Accounting Standard GASB, Accounting Standard 67 and 68. A lot of the numbers, since this plan is fairly well funded and follows a responsible funding policy, a lot of the results end up being the same as the other valuation, in that funding target liability is the same liability here. If the plan was less well funded, we would have to use a lower discount rate and the numbers would diverge. But starting out on page 5, we have a 10-year history of the actuarially determined contribution compared to what was actually contributed, and as you can see, the district has always funded the contribution amount. Turning to page 10, we have some information about the capital market assumptions that are used to determine the discount rate. These were provided by the district's asset advisors for this fund. And that's how we come up with the long-term expected rate of return of 6.75, or it's a contributing factor into that. And then turning to page 13, this is probably the more interesting part of this valuation. They said that funding target liability is, it was called actuarial liability under the report. Here it's called total pension liability, but it's the same number. It's $353,995,560. Down at the bottom of the page, we disclose the sensitivity of this number to the discount rate assumption. So you could see that if the discount rate was lowered to 5.75%, which might occur as the plan gets more mature, a closed plan gets more mature, and the duration of the liability shortens, the plan will likely become more and more conservatively invested. That unfunded liability would actually increase to $97 million. And likewise, if the investment return assumption is more optimistic, it's 1% higher at 7.75, that liability would shrink to $24 million. And that pretty much covers all that's different in this report compared to the other reports. I'd be happy to take any more questions you guys have.
All right, looks like no questions. Thank you very much, Bill. Thanks for your time this morning.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do you need me to hang on to the call, or?
If there's no questions, nope. I believe we are done with you. You may go about your day.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody have a nice day.
Okay, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, August 4th, 2020, and we have a motion to adjourn.
Move.
All right, that concludes the meeting.
Okay. Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting of June 30th, 2020. I'd like to have a roll call. I believe everyone is, the board is present.
We will know who's present.
Okay. Next agenda item is approval of the committee meeting minutes of May the 5th. Can I get a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
It has been moved, seconded. If there are no objections, we'll approve those. And the next item is the discussion by CEO.
Okay, if folks will turn to the fourth page at the top of the page says resolution number 3607. This has to do with the Juneteenth holiday that we awarded. I would put you to the third whereas as to kind of how this works. The executive director has the authority to designate special holidays with the approval of the Board of Trustees. If you recall, kind of really quickly, we kind of polled the board. You felt it was appropriate. We did have a holiday on June 19th. However, it does take a formal action in order to designate a holiday from the past June 19th. So that's what this resolution will be doing, and it'll kind of clear our records. The one thing I will be doing for the board to consider, we will at some point have a regular process of going through and looking at the civil service rules, and I think it's a good idea to look at the schedule of holidays. We'll do that with the Board of Trustees, find out what you'd like to do with it, and see if we should make any permanent changes, and we'll do that before the end of the calendar year. That's all the information I had for that item. Is there any questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson.
Thank you. We'll move on to the discussion by Ms. Coleman of
So
the resolution.
Tracy's Assistant Director, Belinda Farrington, is going to cover this item.
Good morning. Trustees, can I bring your attention to Resolution 3606? This resolution is being presented for insurance brokerage and consulting services. Trustees, we currently have services with the Charles L. Crane Agency who provide insurance brokerage and insurance consulting services to the district. Since Charles L. Crane Agency provides the district with insurance brokerage, insurance consulting services, and risk management, we're requesting this agency to act as the district's broker of record to facilitate the purchasing of the district's excess liability insurer. This action will be establish the agency with a broker of record for 5 years. The budgeting for this cost will be through the General Insurance Fund for one fiscal year of 2020 through 2021, amount $70,000. This contract will provide insurance consulting and broker services for the district. This resolution will exercise the district's second option year and authorize the district to enter into a contract with Charles L. Crane Agency for 1 year. The original contract was for 1 year with 4 option years. Each option is exercisable at the sole discretion of the district. The district will enter into the contract with Charles L. Crane Agency from September 1, 2020 through August 31st, 2021. Are there any questions?
Questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
Trustee Wilson, we have Jonathan Sprague's Assistant Director, Jenny Kenstra, to cover the next item.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Trustees, please draw your attention to ordinance number 15466. This ordinance is to authorize the district to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Regional Justice Information Services Commission, referred to as REGIS, to where we currently have our data center infrastructure co-located. It is also for security and monitoring services. The agreement memorializes that the entities agree that REGIS will provide ongoing hosting, operations, security, and monitoring services for the district computing environment in accordance with established service levels and agreements. This will be an initial term of 1 year with a 4-year annual renewal. The funding comes from the general fund, and the annual amount is $395,000. you have any questions?
There are no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Wilson, we have no other items for the Stakeholders Committee.
If there are no other items, I would schedule the next meeting for August the 4th, 2020, and entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move. Second.
Adjourn. Thank you.
We are 20 minutes ahead of schedule, so
Order the 207th meeting of the Program Management Committee of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. Please let the record reflect those trustees, members of the public, and staff in attendance. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of the June 2nd meeting.
So move.
Moved and
Second.
Moved and seconded. They are accepted. Thank you. Engineering Department agenda items.
All right, good morning. Very healthy agenda. That's why they moved me the best for last. Mr. Singer, if there's a lot of information we're going to be going through, if I go too fast or you need me to stop or have a question, please let me know. But I will kind of try to prompt where I'm at in the program. The actual first three items are all associated with the Brentwood Bound project that the district is partnering with the city of Brentwood. If you recall, back in March, you approved the staff to enter into agreement with the city of Brentwood, whereby during their project, they were going to work on some MSD projects, and we were going to participate with them. So what we're here today is to introduce the dollars associated with those three projects that we're participating with. The first project is the CSO Mary Avenue south of Manchester CSO interceptor elimination. This action would appropriate funds for an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Brentwood. As I stated previously, the board adopted Ordinance 15377 in March, which authorized us to enter into the agreement. The project that we're doing, the CSO Mary project, is approximately 1,930 feet of 8-inch to 36-inch diameter sanitary sewers, some creek bank stabilization, and other appurtenances. The estimated cost of the drainage improvements is just over $2 million. This agreement provides for the reimbursement for the sewer construction, bid price to the city of Brentwood, that is incorporating this project into their scope of the city's improvement project. Our appropriation for the overall project is $2.6 million. That's $2 million, a little over $2.1 million for the project itself. We have contingencies and additional dollars for utility relocation in our appropriation. We'd originally budgeted $3.5 million for the project. Are there any questions on the first project? All right. The next project is the Deer Creek Trunk Sewer Relocation Project. And I have a map. I'll kind of show you where these are at once I get through the three projects. The appropriation, again, for the funds for the agreement for the city of Brentwood. This ordinance authorized the district to enter into a contract for the city's improvement, which consists of the construction of approximately 3,000 feet of 72-inch sanitary trunk sewer. The estimated cost of the drainage to actually relocate the sewer is $6 million. This agreement provides reimbursement up to 50%, not to exceed $2.65 million to the city of Brentwood. Typically a developer, whether it be a city or a private developer, if they relocate our sewers for a development, it's to their cost. In this particular case, the district had a project planned to actually rehabilitate this large trunk sewer through there. So what we're going to do is we're going to participate our dollars we were going to put to rehabilitate or line that sewer where it's at. And we're going to put that towards them relocating, because basically we're going to get a new sewer out of it. So that's what our agreement was. Again, the overall project's about $6 million, and we're participating to the tune of $2.65 million, and all that work will be performed by the city of Brentwood. They actually will bid these projects out, and the district will review their bid prices to make sure they're in line with what we see with our projects. Then the third project is a water quality BMP park along the Deer Creek. This appropriates funds for that BMP park. This ordinance for the improvements of water quality, such as bioretention, permeable pavers, and education signage for public education and public demonstration. This agreement provides reimbursement for the water quality BMP price up to $800,000 to the city of Brentwood. It's for incorporating this into the water quality, into the project itself. The district has a requirement as part of one of its regulatory permits for stormwater to do demonstration and education on stormwater quality throughout the region. And the 2-cent tax that the district currently collects is utilized for those types of things. So this is an opportunity for us to participate with their project and actually have a demonstration. I know most of you have been up to, we take everybody up to the North Point Bioretention just up here in the North City. This will give us another a project out there in the public that we would be able to demonstrate some of the water quality things. And then this fall, we've got another project where the district is going to be redoing our front entrance here to the building itself. That's going to incorporate some green infrastructure into it so we can get a new handicap ramp to the front of the building and things like that. We're going to take that opportunity, so we'll actually have a demonstration project here at Market as well, kind of talk the talk. But those are the 3 projects. In your packet, you also have a map that kind of talks a little bit about the Brentwood bound. It's a project, basically, it's bounded by Brentwood Boulevard to the west, Hanley Road to the east, and Manchester to the north. There's a map there. And what their project essentially is doing, if you recall, if you ever travel that route, that Manchester Road itself is in a floodplain. It floods out, the businesses along there. It's impassable during large rain events. So what they're doing is they're increasing the capacity, the storage capacity of Deer Creek, which is to the south, which will basically leave the area along Manchester not flooded. So that's kind of the purpose of the project. It's twofold. Becomes an amenity for the city. It's going to get some projects done for us, plus relieve flooding along Manchester Road. You go to the next map, it shows the 3 projects. In yellow to the left of that map is the actual CSO Mary that we're participating with them on. The purple line kind of runs from left to right at the bottom of the map. That's the Deer Creek trunk sewer that they're relocating that we're participating in. And then the where you see the lake and the bounded by the yellow, that is actually the where the BMP park will be. So
BMP?
Best management practice. I apologize.
All right.
Thanks for reminding me. Are there any questions? A very good cooperative project that we're working on there.
Mike Lane?
I do. Brad's not here. I haven't searched the whole thing, but my guess is there is some significant bike paths. In other words, the city's planning on it as amenity. So.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to the next item. It is the DC 0203 Sanitary Relief Phase 3 and 4. This action appropriates planned appropriation for additional funds for an ongoing construction project that right now is being constructed by J.H. Barra Construction. The work consists of construction of approximately 17,800 feet of 8 to 54-inch diameter sanitary sewers, including approximately 4,800 feet of 8 to 54-inch pipe and tunnel, and approximately 1,600 feet of slip lining on the project, and additional other construction items. Construction is the 3rd phase of a multi-phase improvement project. Basically starts in this area that I just talked about, was our 1st phase of the Deer Creek, and there's one in between that crosses Brentwood, and this is the very upstream project that's been under construction. It's a very significant project. It calls for the elimination of 7 sanitary sewer overflows along Deer Creek, and these were specific overflows that were mentioned within the consent decree that we have a 2023 deadline for this particular project. Things seem to be going well on the project. Our appropriation today is for $15 million. The initial appropriation was for $13 million, and there will be another appropriation in fiscal year 22 for for the total appropriation of $45.5 million for this trunk sewer project. Primarily along Deer Creek, almost 100% in the city of Ladue. So very big project. Things, like I said, things have been going well. And it actually terminates up by Ladue High School in the west part of Ladue. Are there any questions? All right. The next item, we're staying with the trend here, is a Deer Creek Sanitary Tunnel Pump Station. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of a pump station at the downstream end of the storage tunnel, including the installation of a wet well building, 2 dry wells, and an effluent vault with site improvements at that location. This is the location along Highway 44 in Shrewsbury, where the tunnel that SAK is building, the Deer Creek Tunnel. This is the downstream portion where the pump station will bring the flow from the tunnel and pump it into the Deer Creek trunk sewer and on down to be treated at our Lee treatment plant. Some of the site improvements include paving, fencing, landscaping. They've been utilizing a street called Carr Lane through there. They're going to improve that when all the work is done. Again, this is the second phase of the overall project for the Deer Creek Tunnel project. So this right here, along with the Deer Creek trunk, will allow for the removal of actually 12 overflows. So the 2 projects, the Deer Creek trunk, the Deer Creek Tunnel, and this pump station, pretty obvious they're one of the more significant projects that the district has. Our appropriation, this is a partial appropriation. There are future supplemental appropriations coming. This is for $15 million. There's a future appropriation is planned for a total appropriation of $30 million. And that's what we have in the budget. The district received 3 bids on this project. The low bid was from KCI Construction Company. The low bid was below our designer's estimate. And our appropriation, which includes contingencies for utility relocation, is for equal to the $30 million or below the $30 million, right at the $30 million we had budgeted for the project. MWB participation, we are using SRF and WIFIA funding for this project. So the MWBE goals were 10% for minority and 10% for women. KCI is committed to just under 24% MWB participation on the project. Are there any questions? Next item is the Harlem-Baden Phase 4 Trunk Sewer Rehabilitation Project. This appropriates additional funds for an intergovernmental agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers. This is a project the Corps of Engineers is actually constructing. It appropriates funds for the Corps of Engineers to administer and construct a project in the district CRP. The project consists of construction of approximately 110,000 square feet of shotcrete liner, 1,240 feet of cured in place, and 6,400 feet of spot repairs along 7,000 feet of the 12-foot diameter trunk sewer in North St. Louis City and Hillsdale. The project will reduce combined sewer overflows by reducing I&I and is related to the Harlem-Baden Detention Basin series of projects. There's about 7 projects associated with that. The Corps' estimated construction cost is just under $10 million, $9.985 million. The district's share is 25% of that. This is a program, it's very well detailed in the board write-up, but the district's been working with the Corps for close to 20 years now. They had the ability to utilize up to $35 million for the CSO program, and to date, we've taken advantage of that and utilized $28.6 million. So the district's only obligated for 25% of that overall funding. We're also in the process of working with our legislators to increase that 35 million to 70 million so we can continue to work with the Corps. So it's a very good value for us working with the Corps on these projects. So our 25% match currently for this appropriation will be $843,000 for the project, which will bring our total appropriation to the $2.6 million value.
This is an area that's flooded since the city's existed, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Good.
There's another project on the agenda that we're doing at one of the basins up there. We hope that will help with the flooding as well. So, any other questions? All right. The next item is an item we've been talking about pretty extensively over the last few months, and we kind of indicated we'd be coming to you for this additional appropriation, and we're going to be requesting introduction and adoption of this particular item just simply because of the delays we've seen, and we need to really get moving on the project. It's the Jefferson Barracks Tunnel project. This introduction and adoption asks for appropriate additional funds for a project currently under construction with SAK Construction. The work, just as a reminder, is a construction of 17,800 feet of 7-foot diameter tunnel and additional shafts. The purpose of the project is to eliminate the Martigny and Jefferson Barracks pump station and take gravity flow up to our Lime wastewater treatment plant. This is a partial appropriation of $29 million. We currently have $55 million in the budget. This $29 million will accomplish basically what we've been discussing, and we're going to have a little presentation here to follow up, which will allow us to construct a recovery shaft. Currently, where we had the issues with the unforeseen conditions, and we will tunnel back and recover the existing tunnel machine. And this $29 million also includes the purchase of a new tunnel machine, a larger diameter tunnel machine, to proceed forward with what we're calling phase 2 with the project. Once this portion's complete, there'll be future appropriations, which would bring our total appropriations for the project to $155 million. And our presentation will cover that. So before we move on to the presentation, or any questions, it'd be preferred if you just wait and we could go through the presentation, and we can take questions after that. Jim, do you have the presentation in front of you? It's got a blue. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's what we're starting with. We'll go to page 2. I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Alan here. I'm going to take the first couple slides. As you recall, what you have there is a showing of the entire reach of the Jefferson Barracks Tunnel. What's in red is the, I'm sorry, what's in green is the first phase that is completed up to this point. And then right there in the middle, which has the blow up in yellow, is this phase 1. That is actually the $29 million we're appropriating. We'll dig that shaft there. It's called TBM recovery shaft. It's phase 1 of the recovery program. That's what we're doing the appropriation for. Is it? Are we having difficulty?
I'm sorry.
On the presentation.
That's fine. Let's make sure we have.
My apologies.
No problem.
No problem.
Okay, I have it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and we're on slide 2. And I just explained the yellow, and then the future appropriation we come back is what we're calling phase 2 of option 3, which would be the remaining portion of the tunnel with a 14-foot tunnel boring machine, which we've discussed. If we go on to slide 3, this is a slide we showed you at the last committee meeting. On the left is where we're proceeding with, completing under the current contract. The total cost for that will be just over $153 million, $153,700. We have $65 million in appropriations to date, and there'll be a future appropriations of about just under $89 million. We're here for $29 million of that $88,700,000. Proceeding with the project will take approximately 3 years. What we've shown to the right there was an additional option that we discussed previously, which would proceed with what we're calling phase 1, where we'll dig the shaft, proceed to retrieve the existing tunnel bore machine, and then it leaves the option that to rebid the remaining 14-foot, what we call phase 2. As you can see, there are additional costs involved to this, as well as additional time, and that was our reasoning for proceeding with the option on the left there.
That's the red line, correct, Rich, that you're referring
Yes.
to?
Okay. I apologize. Getting dry here. And there were some questions that came up the last time regarding some of the risk allocation, both on phase 1 and phase 2. So on the following slide, we put those into bullet form, and I'm going to let Alan kind of cover those. He's been the one negotiating with SAK and provide the answers to those questions.
Good morning. As Rich said, there were some questions at the last meeting discussing what are SAK's actual risk and risk sharing. So for phase 1, which is the yellow section of the map, in addition to SAK doing all the geotech investigation and engineering, they're assuming all risk essentially at a guaranteed price, which includes construction of about a 40-foot diameter shaft to go recover the 11-foot TBM. This shaft would be about 200 feet deep. Then SAK will hand mine, or is approximately 210-foot long, 13-foot diameter tunnel through the differing site condition. That cost includes not only all the engineering and design costs, but construction, material costs for actually and tunneling support system. So they will be installing horizontal spiles, spiling. They'll be doing ground stabilization using specialized shoring techniques and grouting systems. So that's all on SAK's plate. And then they will recover and remove the 11-foot TBM, 11-foot diameter TBM that's currently in place. Phase 2, which is the red line moving forward, this is where some of the other questions came up. What exactly is SAK sharing with there? As you can see, some of the highlights is the equipment rental costs are capped at 8 hours per day and at 50% of the approved equipment rates. And that's no matter how many shifts they work. And I know SAK has already discussed working at least 2 shifts if another condition were encountered. The equipment operating expenses, the EOE costs, and these are all costs that the contractor is entitled to if a change of conditions were encountered. That would be charged at 50% of the approved rate for all hours worked for each piece of equipment. SAK has agreed not to charge any daily rental fees for the 14-foot TBM tunnel boring machine that they're planning on using. And to boil it all down, if we use the original contract and compared those dollars with if we hit another change of conditions, essentially, and then we use these this phase 2 risk allocation with SAK, If we hit another change of conditions or differing subsurface condition, it's an approximately a $55,000 a day savings over what we would have paid per the original contract. The other part of phase 2 is SAK is taking on all the engineering costs. There are existing shafts that we've already drilled down there and constructed. SAK is also taking on additional design and construction costs for that piece to make sure the 14-foot TBM that they're proposing would match. You know, it was designed and constructed for an 11-foot TBM. They've already accounted for all the extra engineering, design, and modification costs to make sure a 14-foot TBM would work as well. Are there any questions?
At this time, we're available for any questions.
I have a question. So there are various options were outlined at a prior board meeting. And I don't recall us ever selecting one of those, moving forward with one of those options. Is this $29 million appropriation, would that be money that would be necessarily spent on any of the options? Or is this $29 million for proceeding with option 3?
Regardless of which option we went with, we were going to have to go down, shaft down, go get this tunnel bore machine. And what we're proposing today allows us to do that and proceed with the current contractor, or allows us to go do that and when the time comes, make a decision on whether we should proceed with the current contract, which is our recommendation, just simply because of the savings and the time that we would have to go back, prepare new drawings, which that engineering cost that Alan just talked about, and then actually developing a contract with the new contract. All right.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question. This may be just so basic. I apologize if it is, but so I think you explained in a prior meeting that MSD is contractually obligated to pay the cost of recovering that boring machine. And so is phase 1 the cost of recovering the boring machine? Is that
yeah. Yes, that's we're building a shaft downstream of the differing site condition, and SAK is going to hand tunnel back to that tunnel bore machine and pull that out. Essentially, so that's what the 29. That's what this approach.
Jim, it's more than that. That $29 million is also to complete all the construction in the yellow area.
Oh, you're right.
The tunnel boring machine is just a part of that $29 million. You have to remove it to complete the tunnel. So
that's where I'm pretty confused. And then I'm looking. I mean, I don't understand these. You know, I'm looking at the project cost summary. It says phase 1, $43,400,000. I'm thinking to myself, it costs $43 million to recover that tunnel boring machine. That can't be right, is it?
no, that's not correct. Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Well, that's what's been completed.
43 million. My understanding is 43 million is what got us the hole as far as it goes, the trunk or the hole as far as it goes, up until the point where the machine gets stuck. Then 29 million is to get the machine out so that we can finish up that last little bit. And then there's going to be another discussion. Staff has made a recommendation, but no movement has been made on this recommendation yet, of whether to go with one of two different, or whatever, go from there. So the 29 million is to the 43.4 plus 29 gets us, if you look at 1, this is my understanding, all of the green and the yellow, if you're looking on slide 2, plus the machine out of the ground, so that everything is at a place where the board can decide how do we want to proceed from there.
Correct.
Well, Jim, I can't, when I look at the project cost summary, I can't follow your arithmetic.
Yeah, I can't either.
I just don't, I see the 43 million.
The 29 is inside the 43.4.
Yes.
Well,
But the 43.4 is the green
The 43.4 is the green plus the yellow.
plus
Correct.
the yellow. So it's not 29 million for just the yellow.
Now, we have existing dollars that we still have in the contract, and we're adding 29 million to that to get to those first two numbers.
To get through the yellow.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry about that. Rich, what is the cost, or Brian, what is the cost that we're approving to retrieve the tunnel boring machine?
It's some small amount of the 29 million that's being proposed. Have they broken it out as to exactly what that piece is, Alan?
So, Brian, in phase one, that 43 million for. So I'm going to step back, if you guys don't mind, a little bit.
Please.
To date, we have appropriated $65 million. To date, on the green line, we have spent $43.6 million of that $65 million appropriation. Phase one would be to the 43 million is to go retrieve, that's to dig a 43-foot diameter, 200-foot shaft with the engineering, the geotech, and to construct that shaft.
And hand dig 230 feet.
With spiling and specialized shoring, that's 200 foot into the ground, through a differing site condition that we already know is filled with voids and caves and karst and water and different types of material.
And hand dig isn't, am I understanding this right? Hand dig isn't two guys on a machine that's blasting through. It's 10, 20 men and women working with shovels, picks.
There's going to be some equipment. There's going to be some literal hand digging.
Yeah.
There's going to be what's called horizontal spiling, which is concrete cylinders will be drilled horizontally around this through this feature, just to try to make it safe to get people in there. Yes, then they'll dig it out. What's left, we'll be using grouting machines, probing ahead and grouting with this. The other part that's in this
much more labor intensive.
Extremely labor intensive. The price of the acquiring the 14-foot tunneling machine is in here from Europe, because by the time we get that, it takes about 12 months to refurbish that machine to actually be able to use it. The other part that's in here is we have stored materials. Well, that's in the 43.6. So there's closeouts. If we had to shut down the job after phase one, we have existing drop shafts and structures in there that we would have to work on to do work to make those secure and safe for, at least a couple of years before we're able to start construction again. So there's that is what's in phase one, the 43.4. The 29 then is what we've encumbered to date, the 65 plus the 29 would get us enough to what we've done to date and get through the yellow, retrieving the TBM and the items I just discussed.
And that gets us at a point then where the trustees can decide how they want to finish the remaining red part of the map.
Correct. Green and yellow will be done. And then the two options moving forward, which would get you to the total number, is we can rebid it or we can allow SAK to continue.
But what we're doing right now is to just get it at a stopping point so that a decision can be made, and that is just allocating funds that have already been set aside, that we've already approved.
Plus the 29 million,
Plus
correct?
29.
Yes.
But if
it's stopped and you rebid it, it takes longer for the project to be completed.
So, Trustee Yates, and that's located under the rows that say total cost.
Right.
And project schedule to complete. That's the reflection of the difference between bidding or continuing with the next
But
contract.
that's something down the road.
That's later, yes.
Yeah, that's not something we're deciding right now.
Correct.
And the tunnel boring machine that's stuck in the ground, that that's right smack in the middle of the route of the sewer line.
Yeah, Jim, I understand your concern on the tunnel boring machine, but we have to get it out of the way to build the tunnel. It's where the tunnel needs to go, so.
I mean, it isn't like we could just leave it in the ground, pay the fair market value for it, and go around.
No, correct. We can, yeah, so in order to complete the tunnel through that area, part of it is making sure we pull the tunnel, the price to pull the tunnel out of the ground. Sure, the tunnel boring machine out of the ground.
We can't go around it.
No.
Correct. You would have to, no, you cannot.
Okay,
Yeah, we looked at those options.
okay.
And the 29 million includes the new tunnel boring machine.
Yes, it does. It includes the purchase of the mobilization of the new tunnel boring machine, assuming we're going to move forward with it.
Who owns that? Who owns the machine?
The contractor. Correct?
Correct. If we did not
I mean,
move
not right now because they haven't purchased it, but it
No,
will
but I
be.
mean, we're going to buy it for them.
Well, we're going to reimburse them the cost of the project, which would be the purchase price for them to purchase the tunneling machine.
So wait, that's inconsistent with what I thought. So my question was, we have to incur the 29 million
Yeah.
either way.
Either way, right.
And now you're saying,
We're talking about two different tunnel machines. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The tunneling machine we're talking about is the one that potentially would be used for the next phase.
Larger one.
The larger one for the next phase.
right, but that's not included in the 29.
Yes.
That is included in the 29.
So we don't have to spend the 29 either way, though, then?
Yes, we do. Well, I don't know what the new contract would
Well,
say.
the reason we're including those dollars now and we're asking for that money is basically what Alan says. If we wait, we could go retrieve the machine, shaft down, and then order the machine, but that delays us another year. So we want to go ahead and get the next tunnel boring machine in here so it can be refurbished to move forward. That's the reason we have that in the dollars right now.
But so if we agree to spend the 29 now, then we're essentially committing to option 3 now.
You know, they still have the option. We could just reimburse the contractor for the machine.
Yes.
And then it would be, then we would move forward. In other words, there would be some cost.
And that machine isn't 29. So
No, it's
I
three.
understand.
It's like 3.5 or something.
So I understand, if I understand Trustee Fair's argument, or position, not argument, if I understand your question right, I understand your question to be, hey, if we go and spend this 29, is the fix in for one option?
Correct.
Correct.
And so that's what I understand the question to be. Now, I understand MSD's position is to say, no, one, there's still an option. The trustees still have to go one way or the other, still have that option they have to buy. And what you're saying is, listen, we have a deal right now that if you do choose one, it's got to be ready to go. And that is a small portion of the 29, so the district thinks it's worth go ahead and getting that ready. But it's not so much money that if the trustees decide they want to go the different direction and rebid, that it was a rational use of ratepayer money to at least have that option ready to go. Is that?
Yes, and just so, and the impact of that would be, and you're correct, if we didn't move forward, what we're buying for that extra gaining the year, if you look under total cost, that difference would be the 180 million is assuming that we would rebid the last phase. The 153.7 is the current estimate if we allowed SAK to move forward. We are proposing that we take a risk that there's 3.5 million of that we purchase now to save a year. that we'd reimburse them to purchase. Now, it doesn't necessarily cost us $3.5 million not to use it, not necessarily. We'd have to see when we got that. But that difference then in those costs would be $3.5 million difference. So your difference between the two options, you're right, Trustee Fair, that difference closes. It closes from 180 minus 153, which is 27 million. It closed to a 23 million difference in the two options. Staff thinks that year is worth the potential risk of a $3.5 million if the board decides not to move forward.
Okay.
And that is our recommendation.
But regardless of your recommendation, we're not making that decision now.
You're not making it now, correct?
And if we decide not to go with, or if the board decides not to go with staff's recommendation, that $3 million to have something ready and going is a rational use of ratepayer money just to have that ready, all things considered for this project.
We believe so, yes.
Okay.
I've got a follow-up question. Maybe it's just how we describe this thing. We've got this broken down boring machine that's blocking the route of the tunnel. So obviously got to be pulled out. I get that. When you say it's our contractual obligation to retrieve the boring machine, I mean, the boring machine probably just at this point is scrap value. I assume it doesn't have a whole lot of value to it, but whatever comes out of that tunnel, that's going to belong to SAK. We're not spending this money because we were obligated to give back to SAK this broken down boring machine. We're doing it because the boring machine is blocking the route of the tunnel.
Correct, Jim. Yes, you are accurate. Yes, this is not a project to retrieve a boring machine. It's a project to complete the tunnel. The boring machine happens to be there. If we were capable, some way, of being able to back it out and give it back to SAK, we'd still be here with generally the same numbers looking forward as to how to get the yellow portion of the work done.
Okay, that really helps me understand.
Yeah. Yeah, we probably focus too much attention. It's a technical problem that we have to work by. It's not really a big part of the financial picture of what we're trying to do.
Thank you, everyone.
So is there any more questions? I think was what Rich's. We're good? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all right. All right. Next item on the agenda is the Lindley Drive Sanitary Relief. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 6,200 feet of sanitary sewers 8 to 21 inch in diameter. The purpose of the project is to reduce building backups and overcharged sanitary sewers. This project will provide for the elimination of 4 constructed sanitary sewer overflows and 1 wet weather pumping station. The district received 4 bids on this project. The low bid was from Understall Construction. The bid was below our design estimate. Our appropriation of $4.25 million, which includes $205,000 for utility relocation and other contingencies, was below our initial 2-year budget plan for the project, which was $5.8 million. Our fiscal year 21 budget was $4 million, but because we were so close, we're going to go ahead and appropriate the full value, the $4.25 million for the project, which is quite a bit of savings over our 2-year budget. Understall Contracting on the MBE participation, which had a 17% goal, is providing 24.65% MBE participation on the project. All right, thank you. The next project is the North Point Detention Basin Opti retrofit. This was one of the stormwater basins that Mr. Fall, you were referring to, that we're helping relieve some of the combined sewer system that basically flooded since they were built. This is existing detention basin that's already built, and we're going to be doing a sole source retrofit on this to provide for more opportunity for storage during smaller events. Again, this ordinance authorized the district to enter a contract with Opti RTC and appropriates $350,000 for this project. In an effort to maximize the functionality of the existing stormwater basin, MSD is implementing a smart infrastructure pilot project utilizing the Continuous Monitoring and Adaptive Control Platform, or CMAC, developed by Opti RTC. The implementation will allow MSD to utilize unused storage within the basin during smaller, more frequent storm events. This active control of the basin will be autonomous and based on National Weather Service rainfall forecast and available storage within the basin itself. The benefits of reducing the amount of wet weather discharge to the Baden trunk sewer will result in reducing combined sewer overflow volume and increasing the available capacity within the trunk sewer during wet weather conditions, thereby increasing the level of service to the customers via less backups along the Baden Creek trunk sewer. Again, the overall expected cost is $350,000 for this project.
And this is sole source because Opti, it's their proprietary?
It's a proprietary, and there are other platforms out there, but we want to, before we go out shopping, we kind of want to make sure that this type of technology works.
That's fine. That's at Calvary. Be careful. I have a lot of friends in there.
They're from Boston.
RTC is. I am. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, there it is. They're from Boston. Yeah, they've done some projects similar to this in the Northeast and around the nation. But there's some things we're looking at with all the different basins and tunnels we have around that this type of technology to again utilize these systems not during just the big events but during all events is something we're looking at. All right. The next item is a stormwater infrastructure repair. This action appropriates funds for small infrastructure repair projects on the storm sewer system to be bid through our purchasing. The work to be done consists of the repair, replacement, construction of storm inlets, manholes, and sewers, and other infrastructure that are identified by our operation and engineering departments throughout the district. This appropriation is to continue the implementation of the small repair program. As projects are identified, contractors are hired by the rules of purchasing, and we will provide updates on how that money is spent. And just to give you some results from last year under the infrastructure repair program, the district completed 156 individual work orders for a total of about $1.5 million. So our average cost for these small projects is about $9,800 or just under $10,000. There are other larger projects. We completed 15 projects that were over $25,000. Probably the largest one, if you recall, during the rain events of 2018, we had a large slide up in north on a project called Del Ridge. And it went up to the back of people's houses. We ended up having to buy the houses in order to actually complete the work. And there was some reimbursement from FEMA on that. That was a FEMA flood. But that took a big portion of the dollars. So our annual appropriation for this is $5 million. And we'll get a lot of work done our storm sewer system.
That was at the West Florissant and Chambers area?
I believe so, yeah. We were on the news that actually, basically they walked out the guy's back door and it slid all the way. It was a completed channel, had a trapezoidal concrete channel, just flipped it up and blocked it, so. All right, the next project is actually a appropriation for design. The city said mitigation program, contract A. This appropriates additional funds and authorized staff to amend existing design contract with Jacobs Engineers. It appropriates a total of $925,000. It includes for the additional design of the Harlem-Baden mitigation basin, and pardon me if I go through, there's a lot of words here, Ashland and Essex separation sewers, and provide construction phase services for a project that was designed in the first year for the basins at Calvary, Frederick, Partridge, and Tilly's as a part of the design services contract. The total appropriation, the total cost for construction of these two projects is about $17.5 million. The total appropriation, $925,000 for design services, is $64,000 below our proposed budget, CRP budget. In our budget supplement, the total appropriation includes $482,000 for design services, $21,600 contingencies, and $421,000 for construction phase services. Again, the two projects are the Ashland and Essex sewer separations, which is a lump sum project cost to construct or design for the construction of approximately 30,000 lineal feet of 12 to 48 inch storm and combined sewers. The construction cost for this project is about $8 million and expected to begin in fiscal year 2024. The second project is the Calvary, Frederick, Partridge, and Tilly city shed mitigation basins. It's a lump sum project to provide the engineering and construction. These projects are actually under construction right now for 4 basins and 3 rain gardens as part of the project. The construction cost estimate for this project is $9.52 million. And we just bid that. I think we brought that.
About 30 seconds.
I think there was a incoming call on the computer, I think, is what caused that. Where did I leave you on, Jim? Do you recall? Description of the projects?
I wish my memory was that. I was trying to pay attention, but all of a sudden you stopped, and I didn't know if you'd finished, or I can't remember what it was about. Seconds.
No, let me go. I'll just go ahead and redo it. Okay, that might be easier. This is a city shed mitigation program design contract A. It appropriates additional funds and authorizes the district to under contract amendment with Jacobs Engineering Group for design services of 2 projects. It is the Ashland and Essex separation sewer project and the Calvary, Frederick, Partridge, and Tilly basin projects. So they're basically doing work on 2 design projects with the program. The 2 projects, the first project, the Ashland and Essex, is a design of a project to construct approximately 30,000 feet of 12 to 40 inch diameter storm and combined sewers. That's to relieve flooding on the combined sewer system in the area of a Harlem-Baden watershed. And the construction for that project's about just under $8 million. The second project is the Calvary, Frederick, Partridge, and Tilly. Those are basin projects, construction of basin. Those projects were designed under previously under the contract, and they're being constructed. So we're appropriating for the during construction support by the design engineer on those projects. That project's about a $9.5 million project. So our appropriation for these design services is about $925,000 for this fiscal year to design the one project and to provide construction services on the other. Jacobs, which is the design consultant, had committed to about 32% MWB participation on their design project. The work that they're planning to do this year, they'll be providing just under 42% participation by their MWB consultants, which will put their participation currently right at 37, just over 37% for the project. Are there any questions? Sorry about that, Jim. I think somebody said the internet went out here for a short section, for a short time.
I thought you had finished.
You thought we left you, huh? All right. Before we move on, the following is a large number of design projects, which will design all of our projects for the upcoming fiscal year. We're utilizing 4 consultants to do a lot of this work. And what we've done over the years, we used to actually read every individual design project, which unfortunately Tim is going to have to do at the meeting next Thursday for each appropriation. But what I've done is we've summarized into 4 basic summary pages for the description. So what you have in your packet is you have a summary spreadsheet that lists all the projects, as well as you have a map to show where those projects are located for each one of the 4 consultants. So if you get that map out, you'd be able to see where the projects are. But rather than read each project and each project number and description, what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you a summary description of all the projects that they have planned for design. And then I'll give you an update on where they're at with regard to their MWB participation. If you are having trouble following, let me know. But I'll be using the large spreadsheet that lists all the projects. Are there any questions before I get started? All right, our first set of projects are the Bissell, Coldwater, Missouri, Merrimack sanitary system improvements. This action appropriates additional funds and authorizes staff to amend our existing design contract with Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. The projects that I'm about to give a summary description of can be found on the map. Now I'm going to give a description of the work.
Rich, what document are you on?
The large spreadsheet.
So Jim has got a copy of that?
Yes, Jim has it. Yeah, we sent this to you, Jim.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, yeah. Because of the 11 by 17 format, we did not include it on the PDF. Unfortunately, it wouldn't have been viewable. Sorry about that. Thanks, Brian. The Wood Environmental Infrastructure will be responsible for the overall project management and engineering design of the 13 projects listed that will result in the construction of approximately 17,000 lineal feet of sanitary sewers, 5,000 feet of storm sewers, and the removal of private inflow from approximately 81 properties. They'll also be responsible for the design for the rehabilitation of approximately 188,000 feet of sanitary sewers, the rehab of 530 manholes, the rehab of 723 service connections, and 36 point repairs. The work and design of this project completion will provide for the elimination of 1 constructed sanitary sewer overflows and relieve hundreds of wet weather building backups throughout the combined sewer area. It will also result in the elimination of 1 district pump station. All the projects that they're designing are required to comply with the district's SSO master plan in accordance with the district's consent decree. And back onto the spreadsheet that I have there, the total appropriation for the management and the design services for this Bissell, Coldwater, Missouri, Merrimack Improvement Watershed for Wood Consulting is a total of $4.952 million, which is equal to the budget for the fiscal year 2021. Now on to the MWB participation. The total projected, and there's a chart on this on the second page of the spreadsheet for you following along. The original participation commitment for this long-term project with Wood, they had a commitment of 35% MWB participation. When the district started this contract, at that time, there was actually a goal of 20% participation. Currently, under new contracts, there is no goal. But they committed to 35% participation at that time. With this amendment on the projects that I just described, they anticipate 45.57% MWBE. So almost half the work that's being done this year will be performed by MWB participation. Once this year is completed, the resulting MWB participation after this amendment will be 37.72%, or just under 38%. So they'll be meeting their goal or exceeding it by about 3%. So that's the participation we'll see under the Wood contract. Are there any questions?
Trustee Fair and Wilson, you probably haven't heard this. When we started this program, we decided to take a large part of the program, have a large consultant serve as a program manager for a bunch of small consultants. And you're kind of seeing the results this year of that particular strategy. That's what the next couple of ones will be.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
Didn't set the table.
No. You're doing great. Keep going.
All right. The next one is the Lime Sanitary
The system has detected that a minimum number of lines are connected to this conference. Do you want to continue your meeting?
Please.
Press 1 to confirm. If there is no response, the conference will end.
Yeah, because I don't think there's anybody on the phone anymore, is there?
Jim, you're still there, right?
I'm here.
Okay.
I
That's
see
me
him up
not
there in the
trusting
corner.
technology, but okay.
All right. Lime Sanitary.
All right, this action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend an existing design contract with Burns & McDonnell Engineering Corporation. Again, before I start describing, you can see the location of the maps of the projects on the map. It'll has Burns & McDonnell up on the right-hand side. And I'll proceed with the summary. Burns & McDonnell is responsible for the overall project management and engineering design of 5 projects that will result in the construction of approximately 13,000 lineal feet of sanitary sewers and the rehabilitation of approximately 34,000 lineal feet of sanitary sewers and the rehabilitation of approximately 46 manholes and 15 point repairs. The work on these design projects upon completion will provide for the elimination of 2 constructed sanitary sewer overflows and relieve hundreds of building backups throughout the Lime watershed. Again, all these projects too are required to comply with the district's SSO master plan in accordance with the district's consent decree. And back on to the original spreadsheet, the total appropriation for design services for the Lime System Watershed Consultant for fiscal year 21 is $1,856,000, which is $40,000 below the budget that we had for fiscal year 21. One of the things I do want to note, if you're looking at the spreadsheet, there is no budget or no appropriation for management services for this fiscal year for Burns & McDonnell. There were contingency funds available from previous years that were utilizing them. So we're utilizing existing funds in the contract, and so there's no fees for that, but I did want to point that out. As far as MWB participation, originally there was a commitment, and the chart is on the second page, of 29% participation by the Burns & McDonnell team. The original goal when Burns & Mac was put under contract was 20%. So they were committing to 29%. On this particular amendment, they are providing for the work that's being done this year, 28.57% participation on this work. which will actually result at the end of this year, they will be at approximately 33.54% MWB participation, which is about 4% above their original 29% commitment on the project. So as you can see on these projects, we're doing well with our MWB participation. 2 more to go. Are there any other questions on the Lee watershed? The next is the Lower and Middle River to Pear CSO Controls Improvement Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend an existing design contract with Jacobs Engineering Group. Again, the location of their projects, although there's not as many, can be found on the map provided. Jacobs will be responsible for the overall project management and continued design of one project and the engineering construction of 2 ongoing construction projects. And all these are multi-year design and construction efforts. The 2 engineering support during construction are for the Maline CSO tunnel currently under construction. That's up in the Riverview, North Riverview Drive area, and the Jefferson Barracks SSO tunnel, which we've talked about previously. Both are under construction. They're currently this fiscal year, there's no engineering funding for that project since it's been on hold. We have funds available from the previous year. And finally, Jacobs is continuing the design of the 9-mile, 30-foot diameter CSO tunnel under River to Pear that was delayed in the consent decree. And they're primarily doing design on the connector sewers and the pumping station for the large tunnel. And they're supporting some of we're beginning, those projects are scheduled to begin in 2025. So we're getting ready to start up some of the easement negotiations and some of the property rights for that large project. Again, the projects that Jacobs are designing is to comply with the district's, basically the CSO long-term control plan of the projects that they're working on, and as well the SSO master plan, which is the Jefferson Barracks project for that, for the consent decree. Back to the main spreadsheet again. The total appropriation for design services for Jacobs this fiscal year is $700,000. That is $270,000 below what we originally had budgeted, and that's primarily due to the not needing all the dollars we originally anticipated due to the delay of the Jefferson Barracks tunnel project. On the MWB commitment, Jacobs had original commitment of 22% participation on the project. At that time, there was a goal of 20% when Jacobs was put under contract. This particular amendment, the work they're doing, which primarily consists of engineering during construction services, there's a small amount of work being done by the MWB consultants, only 1.83, but even with that, right now they're, with all the work that they've done up to this point, their MWB participation is at 23.24, which is above the 22% commitment for the project. So they had a lot of their MWB participation rolled into the earlier stages, and probably will continue more when the design continues later on. Are there any questions on the Jacobs contract? All right. The last watershed consult is the River to Pear tributaries and Upper River to Pear CSO controls and the Lower Merrimack System Improvement Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend a design contract with HDR Engineering. The location of their projects that they're working on has been provided on the map. There's only 3 projects. Just a summary of that work that they're doing this year. Again, they're responsible for the project management of 2 sanitary and combined sewer relief projects and the ongoing engineering design of 3 other projects. HDR's engineering design will result in the construction of approximately 11,200 feet of sanitary sewers, 4,100 lineal feet of storm sewers, and private I&I inspection removal in 2 Brentwood study areas. The purpose of the 2 design projects upon completion will provide for the elimination of 1 combined sewer overflow and relieve hundreds of wet weather building backups and reduce combined sewer overflows in the combined sewer area. The 3 ongoing design projects that they're working on, where there's no funding included in this fiscal year, they're working on the construction phase services for the Lower Merrimack Tunnel. That's a project that's out on the street to bid this year. That was designed by HDR. That will be a tunnel that goes from our Baumgartner Tunnel shaft up to take out the Fenton wastewater treatment plant. So that'll be constructed over the next several years. HDR was the designer of that project. And then they're working on the preliminary design of 2 major tunnels, the Middle River to Pear, which is to eliminate 28 combined sewer overflows in the Deer and Black Creek and Hampton Creek areas, and the preliminary design of the Upper River to Pear CSO storage to capture and store 39 combined sewer overflows along the Upper River to Pear. These are projects that are scheduled to begin in the late 2020s and be constructed by the time the consent decree ends at 2038. So right now we're doing preliminary geotechnical work and geotechnical layout of those tunnels, which are basically located in those creeks that I described. Again, the projects that they're designing comply with the CSO long-term control plan as well as the SSO master plan. Back onto the large spreadsheet again. Our total appropriation for design services for the HDR contract for this fiscal year is $1,075,000, which is equal to what we had proposed in the budget for fiscal year 21. The MWB commitment for the project initially was 20%. HDR actually came onto the program a little later than the other 3 consultants. So at the time, there was no goals for MWB participation at that time, but there was a commitment by HDR for 20% participation. This amendment, the work that they're actually doing this year, there is actually no percentage, no work being done by MWB consultants, but the work that was done in previous years had been quite extensive. Right now, after this amendment, they will be at 38.6%. So they've utilized early on in the program a large number of MWB participation on the project. There's just nothing that they're utilizing them for this year on the project. Are there any questions? I do have one more item on the agenda. It's actually something I'll discuss again next month at the August program management, but we wanted to make you aware of it. If we're aware of it, we were going to be asking for an introduction and adoption at the August meeting. It's for additional funds on an ongoing construction project that's in the Olive Washington Grand Eventer combined sewer relief project. It's located basically behind the Fox Theater up on Grand. We're replacing a collapsed combined sewer or an undersized combined sewer located in the alleys behind the Fox. They've had some basically basement flooding at the Fox. Due to redevelopment in the area, the sizing of the sewer, we're replacing it with a larger sewer for the capacity. Unfortunately, all the other utilities got to the alley before we did, and we're dealing with extensive utility relocations, roof leaders coming from all the development. Basically, you've got a lot of buildings that are with all their flow going to the alleys. So we've had to redesign, relocate utilities. So we're coming back for some additional funding. I can't tell you what that funding is. We're still trying to work out some of the utility relocations. But the original appropriation on the job was about 1.85 million. And I think right now we're looking at maybe another 200,000 or some additional to get that job complete. But in order to keep things moving, we're going to be asking for introduction adoption.
In August.
In August, yes. So you won't see this. Otherwise, it will be on the agenda. It'll be the last thing Tim reads next week. That is all I had, Mr. Fall.
Wonderful. Any other business before this body?
No, sir.
All right, then I'd like to say during our discussion about the boring tunnel, I think I may have gone from trying to moderate the conversation to hijacking it from Ms. Fair, Trustee Fair. So I apologize for that if that's the case. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
We're out of here.
Thank you.